So now let's make a little display for it. So let's put this in a different chip so that we can have some more space to play with. And I'll add a node into here, which means when this is closed, I can just plug that straight in there. Just a useful little gadget. And I'll add text displayers and use cool. Now we don't want a border or a background or a shadow. Let's just make this larger. And then we'll have just 3 of them because it will take a lot less time. Okay. And a tip is, if these aren't showing, if you play and pause, then they'll all start showing again. Move that out of the way, and then play and pause, and then put it in the right place. Oh. And rewind, and they disappear again. Now we want to have these display. Now there's a couple of different ways of doing this, and I'm going to use both of them. Use the timeline. So first thing we need to know is if you just grab any wire, such as from a value slider, and plug it into the bottom of the playhead, then you can send it a percentage and it will go through the timeline at that percentage. So now I can activate different amounts of these blocks depending on how much stamina we have left. So trick is, though, we need to turn this into a percentage. So currently it's at 20, so we need to turn it into a range from 0 to 20 to a range from 0 to 1. So let's plug that into a signal manipulator and use the custom remapper. So the input is the value range that we're receiving, so let's just drag that up to be 20. And we can use up and down on these values, but we can't use L1 and square. And that is going to a range between 0 and 1, so it's kind of cramming all those down into a smaller range. And then you can plug that into the playhead. So now if we just manipulate that and change the current value, we're getting a percentage of the current of the full stamina, basically. So if we wanted these to just display at different ranges, we can just put these on the timeline, because you can put any gadget on a timeline. It will just power it on and off at the right time. So while the playhead is here, that isn't powered, and while the playhead is here, it is powered. And that's basically how it all works. So if we're at 0, we'll turn on beats mode by clicking X, and now we can snap to these smaller denominations. So when we're at 0, we won't display anything. That should be the other way around. So let's add the bottom one. When we're at 0, we don't display anything. If we're anything beyond that, from this point onwards, then we'll always display it. So even if it's during these parts. And then the next one, we'll put that on top. And the next one. And then let's do that. And now this timeline is shorter, but it's always a percentage of the whole timeline. So now this still works depending. So if we used a value slider instead, we can test this out. So if we play time and change this, so from there it starts showing the first one, there the second one, and there the third one. But then when you get to the top, it just all disappears because it uses the playhead position, and the stuff to the right of it will be powered. So if we just make these overhang a little bit by dragging the right edge, now they all overhang and they're still powered when it's right at the end. So now if we just test that in play mode, cool. So we jump and it goes down, and as it creeps up again, it shows more of that kind of bar. But it kind of doesn't really transition in a kind of smooth way. So I'll add some keyframe animation. So let's just put that there and make this full opacity and then make it low opacity. So while this keyframe isn't on, it's at 0, and then while this keyframe is on, it's at 100. So it'll and let's make that overhang as well, and we'll just give it some ramp like that. So while it's going through that, it's slowly appearing as as it goes up. So let's just do that for the others. Right, now let's try that out. So if we jump, so you can see it's fading in depending on how much stamina we have. But just as everything else works in here. But let's say we want to just fade these in completely when it's over the right positions. There's this cool thing in all keyframes where you can give it a slow power up. So we'll just make it really large to demonstrate. So it will take that amount of time to come in. So if I jump and then it goes up so that it requires that extra pip, that comes in really slowly, which is nice. But then if we have a slow power down, then it will power down when it goes over here, so that isn't powered anymore. And then it will start going down the opacity. But you can see if I jump, they will just suddenly disappear. This is because at this point in the timeline, that isn't powered, so it starts going down slowly. But also this isn't powered, so it's not being displayed at all anyway. So for that, we need to move these out so they're always powered, but just have different opacities based on the timeline. Yeah, so now let's try that. Yeah, so as something needs to disappear, it fades out. As it needs to appear, it fades in, which looks a little nicer. I'd like to thank Evil Key Mal, Hyper Dream Surfer, Goldwitzer, and all of my other supporters for making this tutorial possible. Check out TAPgiles.com to find out how you can support me in helping Dreams creators. Thanks for your consideration, and I'll see you in the next one.